The Galactic Council chambers fell silent as the final vote was cast. 743 species had voted. 742 had voted for humanity's extinction. Only one species had abstained, the humans themselves, as was tradition when facing judgment. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood at the defendant's podium, her hands steady despite the weight of her species' fate resting on her shoulders. Around her, the massive amphitheater buzzed with alien languages, but the universal translators made their intent crystal clear. Humanity was to be eliminated. "The charges are clear," announced High Arbiter Zektar, his four eyes gleaming with what humans might mistake for satisfaction. "The species known as Homo sapiens has violated 17 core galactic laws, threatened the stability of 4 star systems, and demonstrated an alarming tendency toward violence and expansion. The sentence is total extinction, to be carried out by the Reaper Protocol." Sarah had expected this. For the past 50 years since humanity had first made contact with the galactic community, they had been viewed with suspicion and fear. Humans were too aggressive, too unpredictable, too willing to fight when others preferred negotiation. They bred too quickly, adapted too fast, and worst of all, they never seemed to know when they were beaten. The Reaper Protocol was the galaxy's ultimate solution to problematic species. It was said to be unstoppable, inevitable as death itself. No species had ever survived its implementation. The Reaper would come and humanity would simply cease to exist. No violence, no suffering, just a quiet ending that would remove the human threat from the galaxy forever. "Do you have any final words before the protocol is activated?" Zektar asked, his tone suggesting this was merely a formality. Sarah looked around the chamber at the hundreds of alien faces. Some appeared relieved, others looked almost sad. A few seemed eager to watch humanity's end. She cleared her throat and activated her personal communicator, knowing her words would be broadcast to every human colony, every ship, every outpost scattered across known space. "To my fellow humans," she began, her voice carrying across the vastness of space. "Today the galaxy has decided that we don't belong among the stars. They've decided that our nature, our willingness to fight, to struggle, to never give up, makes us too dangerous to exist." She paused, seeing confusion on many alien faces. They had expected pleas for mercy, perhaps tears or anger. Instead, Sarah was smiling. "They're probably right," she continued. "We are dangerous. We're dangerous because we don't accept that some things can't be changed. We're dangerous because when something tries to kill us, we fight back. We're dangerous because we look at the impossible and ask, how can we make this possible?" The chamber erupted in various alien sounds of displeasure. This was not how condemned species typically behaved. "The Reaper is coming for us," Sarah said, her voice growing stronger. "This galaxy's perfect solution to imperfect species. They say it's never failed, never been defeated, never even been slowed down. They say it's as inevitable as death itself." Now she was grinning openly, and that grin sent an uncomfortable chill through many of the watching aliens. "Well, I have news for this galaxy," Sarah declared. "Humans have been beating death since we learned to make fire. We've been cheating the Reaper since we first picked up a stick to defend ourselves. We beat it with medicine, with technology, with pure stubborn refusal to lie down and die quietly." High Arbiter Zektar activated his authority gavel, the sound booming through the chamber. "Enough! The protocol is activated. Reaper designation Thanatos 7 has been dispatched to Earth. Your species has 7 standard days before implementation begins." The connection to the human colonies closed, but Sarah's last words echoed in the chamber. "Then we'd better get ready to meet this Reaper. And when we do, we're going to show it what happens when you try to kill something that refuses to die." As the session ended and delegates began filing out, many carried an unexpected feeling of unease. They had expected fear from the humans, desperation, maybe even bargaining. Instead, they had seen something that worried them more than humanity's alleged aggression. They had seen confidence. On Earth, Sarah's words had reached every human settlement. In the great cities, in the orbital stations, in the frontier colonies pushing ever deeper into unexplored space, humanity received the news of their death sentence with the same response that had defined their species since the beginning. They got to work. Within hours, every human military installation, research facility, and industrial complex had shifted into crisis mode. Emergency protocols that had been theoretical exercises became immediate reality. Scientists who had been working on abstract problems suddenly found their research redirected toward one singular goal: finding a way to survive the Reaper. Dr. Marcus Webb, Earth's leading expert on xenotechnology, stood in his laboratory staring at the incomplete analysis of Reaper technology they had managed to gather over the decades. The aliens had been careful to keep the specifics secret, but humans had always been good at figuring out how things worked, even when those things were supposed to remain mysteries. 7 days, he muttered to his assistant. 7 days to crack a technology that's supposed to be perfect. His assistant, a young woman named Lisa Park, looked up from her workstation. Dr. Webb, I've been thinking. The aliens keep calling it the Reaper, like it's some kind of force of nature. But what if it's not? What if it's just another tool, another machine? Webb paused in his analysis. Go on? Well, if it's a machine, then it can break. If it can break, then it can be stopped. And if it can be stopped... She trailed off, but the implication was clear. Around the world, similar conversations were taking place. Military strategists examined the few recorded instances of Reaper deployment, looking for patterns, weaknesses, anything that might give them an edge. Engineers worked around the clock to design defenses they weren't even sure would work. Diplomats reached out to the few alien contacts who had shown any sympathy for humanity, seeking intelligence about their approaching executioner. But perhaps most importantly, ordinary humans simply refused to accept their fate. They continued their lives, made plans for the future, and prepared to fight for their survival with the same determination that had carried their species from cave-dwelling hunters to star-faring explorers. The galaxy had made its decision. Humanity was too dangerous to live, but they had underestimated just how dangerous a species could be when it had nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. The Reaper emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the solar system exactly 7 days after the Galactic Council's verdict. It was beautiful in the way that deadly things often are, a crystalline structure the size of a small moon, pulsing, with energy that made nearby space itself seem to bend and twist. Captain Elena Vasquez watched from the bridge of the human flagship Defiance as sensors tried to make sense of what they were seeing. The readings were impossible. The Reaper seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, its energy signature unlike anything in human databases. "Ma'am," reported Lieutenant Commander Hayes from the sensor station, "I'm reading massive gravitational distortions around the target. It's like it's pulling space-time itself into some kind of pattern." "What kind of pattern?" Vasquez asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know the answer. "It's hard to explain, Captain. But if I had to guess, I'd say it's preparing to rewrite the fundamental laws of physics in this system, making it impossible for matter organized in human DNA patterns to exist." The captain felt a chill run down her spine. This wasn't just a weapon. It was a reality editor. The Reaper didn't kill species by shooting them or poisoning them. It simply made them impossible. Across the system, humanity's desperate preparations had reached their climax. Earth's orbital defenses, hastily modified with every piece of advanced technology they could salvage or steal from alien visitors, powered up their exotic weapon systems. Mars base had become a fortress, its underground cities ready to sustain millions if the worst happened. The asteroid belt mining stations had been converted into mobile weapons platforms, their crews ready to ram the Reaper if necessary. But humanity's real hope lay in something much smaller and far more dangerous than any battleship. Dr. Webb's laboratory had become the center of the most ambitious scientific project in human history. Working with barely any sleep for 7 straight days, his team had done something that should have been impossible. They had reverse-engineered enough Reaper technology to understand how it worked. "It's quantum," Webb explained to the Emergency Command Council via hologram. "The Reaper operates by manipulating quantum fields at the subatomic level. It doesn't destroy matter. It changes the fundamental rules that allow specific types of matter to exist. That's why no species has ever survived. You can't fight physics itself." President Martinez leaned forward in his chair. "Dr. Webb, please tell me you're about to explain how we're going to do exactly that." Webb's tired face split into a grin that was equal parts exhaustion and manic determination. "Actually, Madam President, that's exactly what I'm going to tell you. See, the Reaper has one weakness that its creators never considered. It's so focused on being perfect that it doesn't adapt. It follows the same pattern every time because that pattern has never failed. And, prompted General Harrison, and humans are really, really good at breaking patterns. What Webb's team had discovered was that the Reaper's reality editing field had to build up slowly, like a symphony of destruction. It started with small changes, altering the behavior of electrons, adjusting the strong nuclear force, tweaking the speed of light in localized areas. These changes accumulated until the target species simply couldn't exist in the modified physics of their own star system. But there was a window, a brief period during the buildup where the field was vulnerable, where a precisely timed intervention could cause the entire process to collapse. "We have one shot," Webb continued. "We've built a device that can generate a quantum interference pattern. If we can detonate it at exactly the right moment, in exactly the right place, we can cause the Reaper's field to collapse back on itself." "How big is this device?" Martinez asked. "About the size of a briefcase," Webb replied. "The problem is getting it to exactly the right place. We need to put it inside the Reaper's primary quantum chamber, which means someone has to get inside that thing." The silence that followed was broken by Captain Vasquez's voice over the comm. "Dr. Webb, how heavily defended is this quantum chamber?" "Unknown, Captain. We don't even know if the Reaper has traditional defenses. It's never needed them before." As if responding to their conversation, the Reaper began to move. Slowly, majestically, it glided toward the inner system. As it moved, space around it began to change. Stars visible through its field appeared to shift color. The cosmic background radiation started displaying impossible patterns. On Earth's surface, the effects were subtle but growing stronger. Physicists reported that certain quantum experiments were producing results that violated known laws. Electronics began behaving strangely. Most disturbing of all, people started reporting that the sky looked wrong somehow, though they couldn't explain exactly how. Captain Vasquez made her decision. "Dr. Webb, we'll get your device where it needs to go. Defiance was built for exploration, not war. But that means we're fast and we're hard to predict. We'll make a run at the Reaper." "Captain," interrupted Admiral Chen from Earth Command, "that's suicide. We need you to coordinate the fleet defense." "With respect, Admiral," Vasquez replied, "the fleet defense is pointless. Our weapons can't even scratch that thing. This is our only real chance, and it requires someone crazy enough to fly directly into the most dangerous object ever created." She paused, looking around at her bridge crew. To a person, they were nodding in agreement. "Besides," she continued, "I can't think of anything more human than charging straight at something that's trying to kill us." The Defiance broke formation and accelerated toward the approaching Reaper. As they drew closer, the reality distortions grew stronger. The ship's instruments began reporting impossible readings. The stars outside appeared to be moving in directions that didn't exist. "Captain," reported Hayes, his voice strained, "the quantum field is affecting our navigation systems. I'm not sure we can maintain course." "Switch to manual navigation," Vasquez ordered. "Fly by visual reference only. Ignore the instruments." It was a desperate measure, but it worked. The Reaper's field was designed to confuse and disorient technology and biological senses that relied on consistent physical laws. But human intuition, human stubbornness, human refusal to accept that something was impossible, those were harder to edit out of reality. As the Defiance approached the Reaper's surface, they could see it up close for the first time. It wasn't solid in any conventional sense. Instead, it appeared to be made of crystallized space-time itself, geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly, because they existed in more dimensions than human eyes could process. "Scanning for an entrance," Hayes reported. "Captain, I'm finding what looks like docking ports, hundreds of them. It's like this thing was designed to accept visitors." That was when they realized the truth. The Reaper wasn't just a weapon, it was a test. Every species that faced the Reaper had done exactly what the galaxy expected. They had despaired. They had accepted their fate. They had waited for death to come for them. None had ever thought to fight back, to study their executioner, to look for a weakness. The Reaper had docking ports because its creators had expected someone, someday, to be brave enough and crazy enough to actually board the thing that was trying to kill them. Well, Captain Vasquez said as she guided the Defiance toward the nearest port, I guess we're about to find out what happens when you knock on death's door and ask to come in. The docking process should have been impossible. The Defiance was a human ship built with human technology, while the Reaper was something that existed partially outside normal spacetime. Yet somehow the two vessels connected as smoothly as if they had been designed for each other. Captain Vasquez led the boarding party herself, carrying Dr. Webb's quantum interference device in a specially shielded case. With her were Lieutenant Commander Hayes, Chief Engineer Maria Santos, and Sergeant First Class David Kim from the ship's small marine detachment. They had volunteered for what everyone assumed was a suicide mission. The airlock cycled and they stepped into the Reaper. The interior defied description. Corridors stretched in directions that shouldn't exist, with walls that seemed to curve through dimensions the human eye couldn't properly see. The lighting came from everywhere and nowhere, casting shadows that fell upward and reflections that showed rooms that weren't there. Jesus, whispered Hayes, steadying himself against a wall that felt solid, but looked like it was made of crystallized mathematics. How are we supposed to navigate this place? The same way we got here, Vasquez replied, checking the quantum detector Webb had given them. We ignore what our instruments tell us and trust our instincts. It was easier said than done. The Reaper's interior played havoc with human senses. Distances seemed to shift as they walked. Corridors that appeared to dead end would suddenly open into vast chambers when approached with confidence. Passages that looked wide and welcoming would narrow to impassable gaps if entered with hesitation, but gradually they began to understand the pattern. The Reaper wasn't trying to stop them, it was testing them. Each challenge required them to act against their logical training and trust in something deeper than rational thought. It's like a maze, Santos observed as they passed through a room where the floor was on the ceiling and gravity pointed sideways. But not one designed to keep us out. One designed to see if we're worthy of reaching the center. They were making progress toward the quantum chamber when they encountered the first Guardian. It materialized in front of them without warning, a figure, roughly humanoid in shape but composed entirely of shifting geometric patterns. When it spoke, its voice seemed to come from inside their own heads. Species designation human, status condemned. Purpose for boarding unknown. State your intentions. Vasquez stepped forward, fighting the disorientation caused by looking directly at the entity. We're here to stop the extinction process. Impossible, the Guardian replied, its form shifting through configurations that made Vasquez's eyes water. The Reaper protocol has never failed. No species has ever successfully resisted termination. Then I guess we're about to be the first, Kim said, his hand moving instinctively toward his weapon before he remembered that conventional firearms would be useless here. The Guardian seemed to consider this. Curious. Most condemned species spend their final days in despair or denial. You demonstrate neither. Instead, you exhibit determination. It's kind of our thing, Hayes replied. Your species was condemned for excessive aggression and refusal to accept limitations, the Guardian continued. Yet your presence here suggests these very traits may be beneficial. This is unexpected. Santos felt a sudden flash of insight. You're not really trying to kill us, are you? This whole thing, the Reaper, the extinction protocol, it's not punishment. It's a test. The Guardian's form stabilized slightly, becoming almost recognizably humanoid. Perceptive. The entity you call the Reaper serves multiple functions. Termination of truly irredeemable species is one, but identification and evaluation of species with potential for advancement is another. Advancement to what? Vasquez asked. That would be telling, the Guardian replied, and she could swear she heard amusement in its voice. Proceed to the quantum chamber. Your test is not yet complete. They continued deeper into the Reaper, encountering more Guardians along the way. Each one tested them differently. Some posed riddles that could only be solved by thinking outside the box. Others presented moral dilemmas with no clear right answer. But all of them seemed pleased when the humans chose the difficult path over the easy one, when they refused to give up even when faced with apparently impossible challenges. Finally, they reached the quantum chamber. It was simultaneously the most beautiful and most terrifying thing any of them had ever seen. The chamber was a sphere of pure crystallized space-time, with geometric patterns flowing across its surface like living mathematics. At its center, a pulsing core of energy that hurt to look at directly, but was impossible to look away from. "That's it," Vasquez said, checking Webb's detector. "That's the quantum field generator. If we can place the interference device in direct contact with it, the entire Reaper field will collapse," Santos finished. "But Captain, look at those energy readings. Getting close to that thing will probably kill whoever carries the device." "Then I guess it's a good thing I'm the expendable one," Vasquez said, taking the case from Hayes. "Like hell," Kim replied. "Captain, with respect, you're needed to get everyone home. I'm just a grunt. This is exactly the kind of job I signed up for." Before anyone could argue further, the final Guardian appeared. This one was different from the others. Instead of geometric patterns, it appeared almost human. A tall figure in robes that seemed to be cut from the fabric of space itself. Its face was hidden beneath a hood, but somehow they all knew it was looking directly at them. "Welcome," it said, its voice carrying the weight of eons. "You have passed every test, overcome every challenge, and reached the heart of the Reaper. Now comes the final choice." "What choice?" Vasquez asked, though she was beginning to suspect she already knew. "The choice that every species worthy of advancement must make," the Guardian replied. "You can destroy the quantum chamber, save your species, and return to your previous existence. You will be removed from the condemned list, but you will remain as you are, a single species, limited to your current understanding, forever confined to your small corner of the galaxy." The Guardian paused, and Vasquez could feel the weight of its gaze even though she couldn't see its face. "Or," it continued, "you can choose to undergo the true purpose of the Reaper Protocol. You can accept transformation into something greater than you ever imagined possible." "What kind of transformation?" Hayes asked. "The kind that turns a species of clever animals into guardians of the galaxy itself," the Guardian replied. "The kind that unlocks potential you didn't even know you had. The kind that comes with responsibilities you can't yet comprehend." Santos felt her heart racing. "And if we refuse? If we just want to go home and be left alone?" "Then you go home," the Guardian said simply. "The choice is yours and there is no wrong answer. But choose now, because the quantum field will reach critical mass in precisely 17 minutes. After that, transformation will no longer be possible." Vasquez looked at her team, seeing her own thoughts reflected in their faces. They had come here to save humanity, but now they were being offered something that might change humanity forever. "What guarantee do we have that this transformation isn't just another way of destroying us?" Kim asked. The Guardian reached up and slowly pulled back its hood. The face beneath was human. The face staring back at them was undeniably human but transformed. The features were familiar, yet somehow more than human. Eyes that held depths of knowledge that seemed to span galaxies. Skin that seemed to shimmer with its own inner light, and an expression of such profound understanding that it made Vasquez feel like a child glimpsing the work of a master artist. "My name was David Chen," the Guardian said, his voice carrying harmonics that resonated in dimensions beyond sound. "I was born in Beijing in the year 2157. I was part of the first human deep space exploration mission that made contact with the galactic community." The team stared in shock. Ambassador Sarah Chen had mentioned her ancestor, who had been lost during first contact, presumed dead when his ship vanished near the galactic core. "You're supposed to be dead," Hayes whispered. "I was," David replied with a sad smile, "in every way that mattered to the person I used to be. The humans who built my ship, who sent me into space, who waited for me to return, they all died long ago. But something far more significant was born from that death." He gestured around the quantum chamber, and they could see now that the flowing mathematical patterns weren't random. They were telling a story. "Every species that shows promise is eventually tested by the Reaper Protocol," David explained. "Most fail. They accept their fate, beg for mercy, or simply give up. A few fight back, but only with violence, proving they haven't truly evolved beyond their primitive instincts." The patterns shifted, showing glimpses of alien civilizations throughout history, some ascending to something greater, others simply fading away. "But a very few," David continued, "do something unprecedented. They look at certain death and see it as just another problem to solve. They board the very instrument of their destruction not to destroy it, but to understand it. They pass every test not through strength or cunning, but through an absolutely unshakable refusal to accept that some things can't be changed." "You're talking about us," Santos said, understanding beginning to dawn. I'm talking about humans, David confirmed. Your species has something that most others lack, the ability to stare into the abyss and ask it for directions. You don't just refuse to accept limitations. You actively seek them out so you can break them. Vasquez felt a chill of realization. The Galactic Council's vote. It wasn't really about condemning us, was it? The Council serves many purposes, David replied. Yes, they genuinely believed humans were too dangerous in their current form, but they also knew that the only way to trigger the Reaper Protocol was through a unanimous vote of condemnation. They were giving us the opportunity to prove we were ready for advancement. Ready for advancement to what exactly? Kim demanded. David's expression grew serious. To become guardians of the galaxy. To join the ranks of species who have transcended their original limitations and taken responsibility for protecting and guiding those who come after. The quantum chamber pulsed around them, and they could feel time running out. The field was approaching critical mass. The galaxy is vast and full of dangers, David continued. There are things in the deep void that make humanity's worst nightmares look like children's fairy tales. There are civilizations so ancient and powerful that they could snuff out entire star systems without noticing. There are cosmic phenomena that could unravel reality itself if left unchecked. He paused, looking at each of them in turn. The Guardians stand watch against these threats. We protect, we guide, we intervene when necessary. But we're few in number and the galaxy is large. We need species with the right combination of courage, intelligence, and sheer bloody-minded stubbornness to join our ranks. And if we refuse? Vasquez asked. If we just destroy the quantum chamber and go home? Then you go home, David said simply. You'll be safe, your species will be protected, and you'll be left alone to develop at your own pace. In maybe 1,000,000 years, if you survive that long and continue to grow, you might get another chance at this test. Santos stepped forward. But you don't think we should refuse, do you? David smiled, and for a moment he looked exactly like the young explorer who had left Earth centuries ago. I think humans are the most magnificently dangerous species I've ever encountered. I think you've spent your entire evolutionary history looking at things that want to kill you and asking, how can we make this work for us instead? I think the galaxy needs that kind of thinking. The quantum field pulsed again, more urgently this time. But, David continued, the choice has to be yours. And it has to be made by your entire species, not just the 4 of you. That's the rule. Hayes laughed, a sound that bordered on hysteria. You want us to somehow consult all of humanity in the next... He checked his chronometer. 12 minutes? Not consult, David corrected. Trust. Trust that the decision you make here represents what humanity would choose if they knew what you know. Trust that the same spirit that brought you here, that made you board a cosmic death machine to save your species, exists in every human being. Kim was quiet for a long moment, then spoke. What would happen to us? I mean, to individual humans if we accept this transformation? You would become more than you are, David replied. Your lifespans would be extended beyond current imagining. Your minds would be expanded to comprehend concepts that are currently beyond human understanding. You would gain abilities that seem like magic to your current selves. But we'd still be human, Vasquez pressed. You would be what humans become when they reach their full potential, David said. The same way a butterfly is what a caterpillar becomes when it reaches its full potential. Recognizably the same essential being, but transformed into something capable of flight. The quantum chamber was beginning to vibrate, and the mathematical patterns on its walls were moving faster now, building towards some kind of crescendo. Time's up, Santos said, checking the quantum detector. Whatever we're going to do, we need to do it now. Vasquez looked at her team, at Hayes with his brilliant mind and unshakable loyalty, at Santos with her intuitive understanding of how things worked, at Kim with his courage and determination to protect others. She thought about humanity back on Earth and scattered across the colonies, about their endless capacity for growth and their refusal to accept that anything was truly impossible. She thought about her grandmother's stories of the early space pioneers, about humans who had looked at the vast emptiness between stars and decided it was just another ocean to cross. She thought about every human who had ever stood at the edge of the unknown and taken one more step forward. We came here to save humanity, she said finally. But maybe the best way to save something is to help it become everything it has the potential to be. She turned to David. What do we need to do? David's smile was radiant as he heard Vasquez's decision. You need to trust me and trust each other, and trust your species. Place your hands on the quantum core and let the transformation begin. The core pulsed with energy that made the air itself seem alive. As the 4 humans approached it, they could feel something fundamental shifting in the space around them. Reality became more flexible, more responsive to their thoughts and intentions. "Wait," Hayes said, stopping just short of the core. "What? About consent? What gives us the right to make this choice for every human being who ever lived or ever will live?" David nodded approvingly. "The same thing that gave the first humans the right to leave Africa and spread across Earth. The same thing that gave later humans the right to leave Earth and spread across the stars. The courage to choose growth over safety, potential over certainty." "But this is different," Santos protested. "This will change the very nature of what it means to be human." "And leaving the caves changed what it meant to be human," David replied. "And developing language changed what it meant to be human. And learning to use tools, and discovering fire and creating art and reaching for the stars. Every step of human evolution has been a choice to become something more than what you were before." Kim was staring at the core, his face reflecting the shifting patterns of light emanating from it. "What if we're wrong? What if this destroys everything that makes us human?" "Then you'll have failed spectacularly while attempting something magnificent," David said. "And that, more than anything else, is what makes you human." The quantum field reached critical mass. Around them, the chamber began to sing with harmonics that existed in frequencies beyond normal perception. Through the Reaper's sensors, they could see space-time itself beginning to reshape around the solar system. But now they understood what was really happening. The reality editing field wasn't preparing to erase humanity from existence. It was preparing to upgrade the entire star system, to make it capable of supporting the kinds of beings that humans could become. "Together," Vasquez said, extending her hand toward the core, "we've come this far as a team. We finish it as a team." The 4 humans placed their hands on the quantum core simultaneously. The transformation was unlike anything any of them could have imagined. It wasn't painful, but it was overwhelming. They could feel their consciousness expanding, their perception broadening to encompass dimensions they had never known existed. Their bodies remained recognizably human, but enhanced beyond their previous limitations. More importantly, they could feel the change rippling outward from the quantum core, carried by the Reaper's field to every human being in the solar system and beyond. Not a forced change, but an offered one. Each human being suddenly found themselves with a choice: remain as they were, or accept transformation into something greater. The response was overwhelmingly human. Across Earth, across the colonies, in ships scattered throughout known space, humans felt the offer of transformation and asked the same question their species had been asking since the beginning of time. What happens if we say yes? Most of them said yes. The changes weren't dramatic at first. Humans still looked like humans, still thought like humans, still acted like humans. But they were enhanced humans, stronger, smarter, more intuitive, capable of perceiving and interacting with aspects of reality that had previously been beyond their reach. More importantly, they gained access to the galactic network that connected all guardian species. Suddenly, human scientists could collaborate with civilizations that had been exploring the universe for millions of years. Human artists could create works that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Human explorers could travel to regions of space where conventional matter couldn't survive. Back in the quantum chamber, Vasquez and her team were undergoing their own more profound transformation. As the first humans to accept the guardian role, directly they became something like what David had become: beings capable of existing partially outside normal space-time, able to perceive the larger patterns that governed galactic civilization. "How do you feel?" David asked as the transformation completed itself. Vasquez took a moment to assess her new state of being. She was still herself. She could still remember her childhood on Mars, still felt the same fundamental drives and desires that had always motivated her. But those drives were now supported by capabilities she was only beginning to understand. "Like I've been wearing a blindfold my entire life and just realized I could see," she replied. Hayes was examining his hands, watching the way they seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The mathematics of this is beautiful. I can see the equations that govern quantum field interactions. It's like someone just handed me the user manual for reality. Santos was staring out at the space beyond the chamber, seeing for the first time the vast network of energy that connected every star system, every planet, every living being in the galaxy. It's all connected, she whispered. Everything. Every choice, every action, every thought ripples through the whole system. Kim was the most changed of all of them. His natural protective instincts had been amplified and refined into something cosmic in scope. He could sense threats and dangers across vast distances, could feel the places where the galaxy's defenses were weak or failing. There's something wrong in the Andromeda sector, he reported, his voice carrying new authority. Something that doesn't belong in this reality. It's hungry. David nodded gravely. Your first assignment as Guardians. The entity Kim is sensing is what we call a reality eater. It exists in the spaces between dimensions and feeds on the fundamental forces that hold the universe together. Left unchecked, it could unravel entire galaxies. The weight of responsibility settled on them like a mantle. They had come here to save humanity from extinction, and instead, they had accepted responsibility for protecting the entire galaxy. This is what you do? Vasquez asked. You spend eternity fighting cosmic horrors that most civilizations never even know exist? We protect, David replied simply. We guide. We ensure that the young species have the chance to grow and learn and eventually join us. It's the most important work in the universe, and it's also the most rewarding. He gestured toward the viewing ports, where they could see the solar system being transformed. Earth still looked like Earth, but it now existed in a state of enhanced reality where the laws of physics were more flexible, more responsive to conscious intent. The human colonies were experiencing similar upgrades. Your species will need time to adjust to their new capabilities, David continued. Some will choose to remain essentially unchanged, living quiet lives on peaceful worlds. Others will become explorers, pushing the boundaries of known space. Still others will become researchers, artists, teachers, builders, and some will become guardians, Vasquez said, understanding. Some will become guardians, David confirmed. When they're ready, when they've had time to grow into their new potential, the best and brightest and most determined will join us in protecting the galaxy from threats that could destroy everything we've worked to build. As if summoned by their conversation, new presences made themselves known in the quantum chamber. Other guardians, representing dozens of species that had undergone the same transformation over millions of years. They appeared as beings of light and energy, but Vasquez could sense the essential nature of each one, the crystalline logic of the Zarathi, the flowing wisdom of the Aquilari, the burning passion of the Pyrotheans. Welcome humans, they said in unison, their voices harmonizing across dimensions. Welcome to the true purpose of sapient life in this galaxy. The formal induction took place in a space that existed between realities, where representatives of every guardian species gathered to witness humanity's ascension. It was a moment of profound solemnity and joy, marking not just the survival of humanity, but their elevation to cosmic significance. But even as the ceremonies concluded and the guardians began to disperse back to their various duties, Vasquez felt a familiar stirring in her enhanced consciousness. It was the same feeling that had driven her to volunteer for deep space exploration, the same impulse that had made her board the Reaper in the first place. David, she said, as they prepared to leave the quantum chamber. What's beyond the galaxy? What's out there in the vast darkness between galaxies? David's expression grew thoughtful. Things that make reality eaters look like minor nuisances. Civilizations so ancient that they predate the current universe. Entities that exist on scales we can barely comprehend. He paused, studying her face. Why do you ask? Vasquez grinned, and in that grin David could see the unmistakable spirit that had made humanity worthy of guardianship in the first place. Because someone needs to go out there and see what's possible, she said. Someone needs to push the boundaries, explore the unknown, and find out what other kinds of impossible things might be waiting for us. David laughed, a sound like stellar wind across cosmic dust. And that, Captain Vasquez, is exactly why the galaxy needed humans. 3 months after the transformation, humanity was adjusting to their new reality with typical human adaptability. The changes had been gradual enough that most people simply incorporated their enhanced abilities into their daily lives, without much fanfare. Enhanced strength meant construction workers could build faster and safer. Improved cognition meant scientists made breakthrough discoveries almost daily. Expanded perception meant artists created works that touched the soul in ways previously impossible. But it was the children who adapted most quickly to the new possibilities. Dr. Sarah Kim was studying this phenomenon from the newly established Guardian Academy on Luna, where young humans were learning to use abilities that their parents could barely comprehend. She watched through enhanced senses as 8-year-old Marcus Webb Jr. casually manipulated gravitational fields to make his toy spaceship actually fly, while his friend Lisa Park created small pocket dimensions to store her drawings. "They don't think it's strange," Sarah reported to the Guardian Council during their weekly meeting. To them, being able to perceive 11 dimensions or communicate telepathically with plants is just as normal as learning to read or ride a bicycle. Guardian Vasquez, now serving as humanity's primary representative to the council, nodded thoughtfully. She had spent the past months learning her new role, discovering that being a guardian involved far more than just fighting cosmic threats. Most of their work involved subtle guidance, helping younger species develop in healthy directions while allowing them to make their own choices. "How are the adults handling it?" asked Guardian Zephyr 7, a crystalline being who had once been part of a hive-minded species before their own transformation. "With typical human pragmatism," Vasquez replied. "They're treating it like any other technological advancement. They want to know how it works, how to use it efficiently, and how to make it better." That last point was causing some concern among the older Guardians. Most species, upon reaching Guardian status, were content to maintain their new abilities and use them responsibly. Humans, on the other hand, immediately began trying to improve upon them. Dr. Marcus Webb Sr., working with a team of enhanced human scientists, had already developed modifications to the basic Guardian enhancement package. Their improvements were modest but significant: increased efficiency and dimensional perception, better integration between enhanced abilities and baseline human consciousness, and most remarkably, the ability to temporarily share enhancements with unenhanced humans. "They're treating cosmic transcendence like an engineering problem," Guardian Flamesinger observed, his energy form flickering with what might have been amusement. "Is this concerning or admirable?" "Both," David Chen replied. He had spent the most time with post-transformation humanity and understood their nature better than anyone. They're not trying to break the rules out of arrogance. They're trying to understand the rules so thoroughly that they can make them work better. This drive for improvement had led to humanity's first major contribution to galactic civilization. When Guardian Kim detected unusual readings from the Reality Eater in the Andromeda sector, the human response had been characteristically direct. Instead of following established protocols for containment and gradual weakening of the entity, they had developed an entirely new approach. Traditional methods would take approximately 2,000 years to fully neutralize the Reality Eater, Kim reported to the assembled Guardians. The human method will take 6 months. The human plan was audacious even by Guardian standards. Instead of fighting the Reality Eater, they proposed to cure it. The entity wasn't malevolent, their research had revealed. It was simply a form of life that had evolved in a universe with different physical laws, and it consumed reality because that was the only way it could survive in this dimension. "We can modify local space-time to create a pocket where the entity can exist without consuming surrounding reality," Dr. Webb explained to the skeptical Guardian Assembly. "It's essentially cosmic surgery, but the theory is sound. The operation required the combined efforts of dozens of Guardian species, with humans providing the innovative approach and other species contributing their specialized knowledge and abilities. It was the largest cooperative effort in galactic history, and its success marked humanity's full acceptance into the Guardian community. But success brought new challenges. As word of humanity's innovative solutions spread throughout the galaxy, other species began requesting human assistance with problems they had previously considered unsolvable. The Ethereal Collective wanted help with a dimensional rift that had been slowly expanding for millennia. The machine empire needed someone to communicate with an artificial intelligence that had transcended beyond their ability to understand. The Void Dwellers required assistance with entities that existed in negative space. Each request was an opportunity for humans to prove their worth as guardians, but also a reminder of how much they still had to learn. The galaxy was vast and ancient, filled with phenomena that challenged, even enhanced human understanding. It was during one such mission that Guardian, Santos, made a discovery that would change everything. She was investigating a dead star system in the galaxy's outer rim, one that had been sterilized by an unknown force approximately 50 million years ago. The system appeared completely lifeless, but Santos's enhanced senses detected something unusual. A signal, buried so deep in quantum foam that only the most sophisticated perception could detect it. It's a message, she reported to the other Guardians. Encoded in the fundamental structure of space-time itself. Someone wanted to make sure this message would survive even if the entire universe collapsed and reformed. The message, when finally decoded, was simple but profound. They are coming. The first builders return. Prepare. Guardian David Chen felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature of space. The first builders was a term from the oldest Guardian archives, referring to the entities that had allegedly created the basic structure of the current universe before departing for realms beyond known reality. Are they a threat? Vasquez asked, though she was already preparing for the possibility that they were. Unknown, David replied. The archives suggest they were benevolent, but also that their return would mark the end of the current cosmic age and the beginning of something entirely different. As if in response to their discovery, space itself began to change. Throughout the galaxy, sensitive instruments detected subtle alterations in the fundamental constants of physics. The speed of light fluctuated by microscopic amounts. Gravity became slightly more responsive to conscious observation. The barriers between dimensions grew thinner. Across thousands of civilizations, beings looked up at their skies and saw stars that seemed somehow different, though they couldn't explain exactly how. The galaxy's greatest minds, both Guardian and non-Guardian, began working together to understand what the changes meant. But it was a 12-year-old human girl named Amy Chen who provided the crucial insight. They're not coming back, she told the Emergency Guardian Assembly, her child's voice carrying the authority of absolute certainty. They never left. They've been sleeping and now they're waking up. As if summoned by her words, reality began to shift around them. The quantum chamber where they were meeting expanded into dimensions that didn't have names. And in the center of that impossible space, something ancient began to take shape. The entity that manifested in the quantum chamber was unlike anything the Guardians had ever encountered. It wasn't a being in any conventional sense, but rather a conscious expression of the fundamental forces that governed reality itself. When it spoke, its words rearranged the basic structure of space-time around them. Fascinating, it said, and the concept of fascination became temporarily visible as geometric patterns in the air. You have exceeded all projections. Guardian Vasquez stepped forward, her enhanced senses barely able to process what she was seeing. You're one of the first builders. I am the first builder, the entity corrected, and they understood that it wasn't boasting but stating a simple fact. I am the template from which all others were derived, the consciousness that designed the current iteration of this universe. The assembled Guardians felt a mix of awe and terror. They were in the presence of something that had literally created the laws of physics they relied on to exist. The message in the dead system, Santos said. You left that warning? I left many warnings, the first builder replied. Across multiple universes in various formats preparing for this moment. The return was always inevitable, but the outcome was never certain. David Chen, drawing on his centuries of experience as a Guardian, found his voice. What outcome? What were you preparing for? The first builder's attention turned to him, and David felt as though every thought he had ever had was being examined and catalogued. The graduation test for your particular iteration of reality. Every universe we create is essentially a nursery, designed to nurture consciousness until it reaches a point where it can transcend its original limitations. And have we reached that point? Young Amy Chen asked, her child's directness cutting through the cosmic grandeur of the moment. The first builder's attention shifted to her, and she felt a warmth that seemed to emanate from the core of existence itself. You specifically have surpassed it. Your species has accomplished something we thought might be impossible, which is, Vasquez prompted. You have achieved transcendence while retaining your essential nature, the first builder explained. Most species, when they reach guardian status, become something entirely different from what they were. They trade their individual identity for cosmic awareness, but humans have somehow managed to become cosmic entities while remaining fundamentally human. The entity paused, and they could feel reality shifting around them as it considered its next words. You are still curious, still stubborn, still determined to push boundaries and solve problems. You have gained the power to reshape reality, but you use it to build rather than simply to maintain. You look at the impossible and ask how to make it possible, even when you are yourselves impossible by the standards of your original universe. Guardian Kim felt compelled to ask, is that good or bad? It is unprecedented, the first builder replied, and it changes everything. The quantum chamber expanded further, becoming a space that existed partially in every dimension simultaneously. Through its walls, they could see the entirety of galactic civilization, billions of species, trillions of individuals, all going about their lives unaware that the fundamental nature of their universe was about to change. What happens now? Dr. Webb asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. Now we give you a choice, the first builder said. The same choice we once faced when we transcended our original limitations. The entity gestured and images began forming in the space around them. They saw universes being born and dying, realities folding in on themselves and blooming into new configurations, consciousness spreading across scales that defied comprehension. You can remain as you are, the first builder continued, guardians of this galaxy, protectors of the species within it, living out your enhanced lives until this universe reaches its natural end. It is a noble path and one that would bring meaning and purpose to eons of existence. Or, Vasquez asked, though she already suspected what the alternative would be. Or you can take the next step, the first builder replied. You can become builders yourselves, creators of new universes, designers of new forms of reality, shepherds of consciousness on a scale that encompasses not just galaxies, but entire cosmic ages. The weight of the choice settled on them like the gravity of a collapsing star. They were being offered the chance to become gods, essentially, but gods with human hearts and human values. What would happen to everyone else? Santos asked. To all the species we've sworn to protect? They would be given the same choice you once were, the first builder said. Those ready for transcendence would join you. Those who preferred to remain as they are would be cared for and protected until they too were ready to grow. And if we refuse? Kim wanted to know. Then you continue as you are and we respect your choice, the first builder said simply. But understand that this opportunity may not come again for millions of years. The universe follows cycles, and we are at the end of one cycle and the beginning of another. The Guardians looked at each other, and in that moment, they were not cosmic entities but simply humans faced with an impossible decision. They thought about Earth, about the colonies, about all the humans who had chosen transformation and all those who had chosen to remain unchanged. They thought about the responsibility they already carried and the vastly greater responsibility they were being offered. We need to ask them, Vasquez said finally. We need to ask humanity what they want. The first builder's response might have been a smile if such a concept could apply to an entity of its nature. Spoken like true humans, very well. You have one solar rotation to consult with your species and return with your answer. As the entity began to fade back into the quantum foam from which it had emerged, it left them with a final thought. Remember, the choice is not just about power or responsibility. It is about what you choose to do with the infinite possibilities that true transcendence offers. Choose wisely, but choose as humans. When the presence was gone, the Guardians found themselves alone in the quantum chamber, facing the most important decision in human history. They had beaten the Reaper, transcended their limitations, and become protectors of the galaxy. Now they had to decide whether to become architects of reality itself. And for the first time since boarding the Reaper, Vasquez wasn't sure what the right answer was, but she was certain of one thing. Whatever humanity decided, they would face it together, with the same stubborn determination that had brought them this far. After all, they were still human. And humans never backed down from a challenge, no matter how impossible it seemed.